Hello creatives, welcome to episode 9, and today, I'm talking to you about visibility and vulnerability. It's funny because the word vulnerability came to mind right at the very start of launching the brand, when I talked a lot about being vulnerable in the face of toxic masculinity, where there's really a challenge there. For me, it comes from my personal journey, from questioning what it means to be masculine, what it means to be masculine, what it means to be toxic. Boys, don't cry, you know, that's dead. I cry. I'm a Pisces. I cry. But there you go. There was this questioning of how to offer a new way of being masculine, a new definition. 5 years ago, back then, in the meantime, the conversation has evolved a lot, changed, and actually, it may have even faded away a bit in favor of other topics. But that idea was still there. What does it mean to be vulnerable? Can a man be vulnerable? Is it? What does it actually mean to be a vulnerable man? Is it about talking about your emotions? In my case, I think yes, because I think we can agree that men with a capital M have a lot of challenges with their own emotions. And then, of course, plenty of other people do too, without wanting to get into that discussion. But there you go, it's about how to redefine that idea. And the question of visibility is, how can you be visible, be a man, and not be? The notion of toxicity, toxic masculinity, how do we redefine it? How do we allow ourselves to be vulnerable? For me, there's also this question of why I want to be seen, while at the same time being very afraid of being seen. There were several aspects to it. Firstly, being seen, there's this idea of success, meaning that it will inevitably be noticed, but also being recognized for your work. When the industry starts to recognize you as a creator, when you're an A-lister and you get featured in those kinds of magazines, Vogue, GQ, and the like, who start calling you the new designer, and so on. It was a massive ego boost, but yes, I definitely wanted to be recognized, that's for sure. Being seen, though, is another matter. I wasn't necessarily up for that at first. I wasn't the type to be in front of the cameras, unlike now, where I've put in a huge amount of work to be here. Because it's a tough thing to do. I'm not exactly shy, but I am quite introverted. So I can easily freeze up in front of the camera. I don't always want to reveal everything about myself, and I definitely don't want to put my personal life on display, absolutely not. Yes, there was still that desire to be seen, but more, I think, internally as well, where when someone looks at my work, they say, "Ah yes, I get what you're saying." And it's a bit, well, awful. It's a bit like seeking validation, isn't it? There's definitely an aspect of seeking validation, in a way, which can be a very bad game as well, of disgust and bad luck, wrong place, but I'll talk more about that later. But yeah, being seen also scared me, because there's a bit of a sense of success in the work. Can you be visible in the spotlight without losing something? And I think sometimes we're afraid of losing ourselves, to begin with, because I've seen people step into the spotlight before they were ready, and actually, it often ends very badly. Or else it's too much, too soon, and so, it's something that rises very quickly and falls just as fast. That's not really the idea I want to have either. You have to be ready. I think, once again, it's a matter of mental preparation, and practical preparation too. Are there things you have to sacrifice? Yeah, I think sometimes, yes. A little anecdote. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I can't remember. Anyway, I did a video with Squeezy and Jerome Neil Panagis Pasco for Who is the Imposter? It was brilliant. And I didn't realize the impact these people had, not in terms of YouTube views or anything like that, but in the sense that, for the next 3 months, wherever I went, people would point at me in the street, anywhere, and I really felt watched, stared at. I wasn't expecting that at all. Because actually, it's just a little thing, it lasts 10 minutes, and you think, yes, 1 million people have seen it, but the impact is huge. And I think in that context, you have to be prepared. You have to be ready to receive that. It's all very good-natured. Yes. No excess, nothing at all. But more often people say, your face looks familiar. I've seen you somewhere. We know each other, don't we? Oh, yes, YouTube. Ah, right, there you go. So, it's funny, it's sweet, and so on. But I think it's a positive example. But sometimes that might not necessarily be the case, and you have to be prepared. You have to know, well, what protected, but I'll remind you of that later. And another thing, for example, another thing that happened last year is that I ended up with an Instagram account called Fan of Stephen Posoro. By the way, I still don't know who it was. I don't know if it was a joke from my interns, my team, my mates, not at all. So you can imagine it was a bit of a panic for 3 hours, trying to figure out who was having fun making an account like that. And it's sweet and there's no problem, but it's just a bit creepy. Because when people post photos of your workshop or of you without your permission, we're not in you, no stalking here. Please, it's a bit creepy, privacy, you know. But there you go, there's all that. And then, on top of it, what I discovered recently is that I had a false belief, or at least an unconscious fear, something very deep-rooted. Without going into detail, basically, it's that if I'm visible and successful, well, I'll be killed. I can't explain the why or how, but it wasn't very pleasant to discover. So, that's been worked through, everything's fine, it's brilliant. But there you go, you have to be ready. We're not in the 90s anymore, it's 2025. Networks are everywhere, cameras are everywhere. You have to be ready, and I think you need to know how to be as vulnerable as possible, as authentic as possible, without being completely transparent, like a pane of glass. Because that can be used against you. But I really like working with this idea of vulnerability in my work. I like seeing something quite fragile, somewhere between the scar and the I've suffered in the past, but it's been resolved and I'm here. I'm standing and moving forward towards the thing. It's really a tension that I love in my work, in the image. By the way, we're currently working with a photographer whose work will be released soon. We're also incredibly sensitive. There's this side of, you know, we feel everything, we see everything. It's a bit like a loop in the brain. We need to. Well, I need to. I say we, but it's because there are several people around me who are like this. We need to protect ourselves too. Sometimes, there's fear of being judged or criticized. When you've been criticized a lot in life, it's not pleasant. But I think that's also part of the game. There's a kind of performance to maintain the image. Here, I'm thinking about social media, Instagram, and so on. No matter what's going on behind the scenes, you always have to smile, always show your best self. Always show that everything's fine, that everything's cool, life is beautiful. You know, nothing. No, actually, sometimes you just don't feel like it. You're just in a bad mood. Sorry, but that's how it is sometimes. You're just in a bad mood, you don't feel like it and that's it. Actually, sometimes you just get slapped in the face and you don't feel like it. And sometimes, not feeling like it is being really honest and really vulnerable. Listen, today, no, I'm not okay. This is happening in my life. It's nobody else's business and I just don't feel like it. And there you go. So it's also about being authentic. And it really makes me laugh because I'm not someone who lies. I don't like lying. Honestly, I find it really hard to lie. And sometimes, when people say things to me, I'm just like, great. Let's be human above all else. Once again, we're privileged in fashion. Let's be human above all else. We need a bit of lightness and authenticity, really. If it's too smooth, it just slips by, it doesn't work. It needs to be a bit rough around the edges. So then, is vulnerability a strength or a danger? I think it's a strength, because if you're able to be open and it's under control, you can open and close the, how can I put it? The floodgates, the valves. Both, together. There can be a danger, because yes, of course, anything can be twisted, can be taken out of context, changed, or a word said at the wrong moment can be turned against you, and then there's drama and a bad buzz. That's true. But then, Yes, there was something that used to freak me out, and that was to do with my own family. Saying things they might not necessarily know about, or where there have been a lot of prejudices. Actually, sometimes, in interviews where I talk about things pretty personal, but without going into too much detail, I think to myself, well, if my parents read this, I'm not sure they'd be okay with it, but it's not the end of the world. At some point, you just have to speak your truth when it's time to do so. Should you mix your personal and professional life? I don't necessarily agree with that, but sometimes there are personal things that are relevant at a certain point, like when we're talking about mental health, because, well, it happened. I also think that talking about your past is a good thing, to understand where you come from. I've rarely talked about being of Portuguese origin. People aren't really interested in it. The media, honestly. But I'm not proud, I'm Indian. I'm neither proud nor ashamed. It's my culture. The Portuguese have good food, great pastries. That, for once, please, go and eat some pastis de nata. That, for once, we're actually quite proud of. But my family is, on the whole, quite generous. I'm thinking more about my grandmother. In fact, I've got a photo here. That's my grandmother and me when I was little, as you can see already. A pretty well-developed sense of style. I think I must have a photo album with at least 100 photos, so a different look every day. That was my mum's thing. She loved dressing me up every day and taking photos of me every single day. Every day. And what's quite funny is that there are things that are completely... I must have been, between 2 and 5 years old in the photos, and there are outfits, pieces that are completely in fashion today. The first time I posted a childhood photo, I thought, I'll put this on Instagram, then realized, that's really personal. As a memory, why do that? I just thought my first fashion memory is my photo albums. Childhood photos, or my mum would take pictures of me in different outfits, jeans, suits, Christmas, all sorts of things. It really is a promise of fashion. It makes me question being vulnerable with my very first experience of fashion. That's it, it's my childhood photos, all dressed up, looking cute, as a baby. It's cute, you have to admit. But yes, so showing yourself, yes, but still protecting yourself. Because, a bad buzz can happen very quickly, I think. You shouldn't put yourself in danger either, not in danger psychologically, but it's a bit like that. Saying something, doing something that you might not be able to stand by afterwards. I think you have to listen to yourself above all. Once again, I was really well supported on certain topics, with Tashda Press or my coach at the time, and my friends too. Of course, I think my best friend is the one for that. Shout out to Sonia. She also knows when to give me a kick up the arse and when to tell me, you're going too far, calm down. By the way, I was asked a question on a podcast with Damien not long ago. It was, how do you manage your private life, your personal life? I told him, you don't mix things up with work. Personal matters are personal, and work is work. No. Well, you get the idea. No need for any more gestures than that. We just keep it like that. For once, I don't like putting things in boxes, but here, we do put things in boxes. We don't mix everything together. I protect myself from that. On Instagram, I have my professional account. Maybe I have a personal account, maybe not. It's personal. Only my close people are there, just like my life. I block it out, and I think we've found a good balance. We're actually doing pretty well. And the advice I would give is, never do something you're not ready to do. And beyond that, really write it down in black and white. Which part of myself? What do I want to show, and am I okay with showing it? And alongside that, what do I not want to? Absolutely not show, and that's okay. And that list can change over time. It can change depending on the context, and there are people with whom I'm very comfortable talking about certain topics. And in this case, this podcast is a bit of a challenge for me, being in front of the camera, constantly talking, discussing spirituality, what I've experienced, and all that sort of thing. But that's kind of the vibe in my studio. That is to say, yes, I admit, sometimes we have tarot nights. We draw the cards, it's just for fun. But it's cool. There you go, it creates a good atmosphere. We do a human design reading because... So, human design, if you don't know what it is, Google it. Basically, it's also linked to your date of birth, place of birth, it's kind of the patterns and main outlines of your profile. Psychoenergetic/personality. And it's sort of your basic way of functioning, and it's pretty freaky because it's actually quite accurate. And I've experienced it myself. Same thing, always try it out first, then decide. And it made me realize a lot of things, like the fact that I shouldn't always be the one to initiate conversations or projects, but rather that I should respond. So, when something really excites me, I seize the opportunity. And if I don't really feel it, if it's not a yes at 800 to 300%, then it's a no. So I have to say no. That's something I'm still learning every day. But there you go. Thanks to these tools, I find my balance. And I've done a bit of my own. The advice I gave you is about what I can say, what I can't say, and who I am both publicly and personally. And that's it. You have to separate things. And now, it's your turn to do it.